UFC Fight Night Vegas 78, Luque versus Dos Anjos takes place this weekend, and I'm going to go through the entire card, starting with the early prelims, ending with the main events, giving my prediction and breakdown for every single fight on the card, starting with the early prelim opener of Julianna Miller versus Luana Santos. I'm going to go with Luana Santos purely because of the fact that I watched Julianna Miller's last fight, and that's all there is to it, really. I watched her last fight. It was absolutely terrible. She has no skill whatsoever. She had really, really bad fight IQ in that fight as well, jumping for submissions that were putting her on bottom position. No stand-up ability whatsoever. Now, saying all of this, she might just go out there and win. That's how women's MMA works. However, I am going to trust in 5-1 Luana Santos, 23 years of age, has lost on the regional scene by split decision, but does have an amateur record and has a couple of decent wins in her last two fights, beating a 4-1 opponent and a 3-0 opponent. There's really no telling what's going to happen, but I watched Julianna Miller's last fight. And that's all there really is to explain to you guys. If you watched her last fight, I don't think there's a logical way you can ever pick her to win a fight again. We move on. Up the card, Montserrat Ruiz versus Jaqueline Amori. Another women's fight. Wonderful. I'm going to go with Jaqueline Amori over Montserrat Ruiz. I know she didn't have a great debut against Sam Hughes. She lost by decision. She ended up on bottom position and ended up just sort of being held there at moments and didn't look all that great on the feet either. But at the end of the day, she is an American top team prospect, 28 years of age, had a long career so far. I feel like she's got this one in the bag. She's got a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu background. She was in the World No-Gi Championships. I'm going to have to side with Jaqueline Amori over Montserrat Ruiz because I know that she won against Cheyenne Velismas, but it was with the most basic move I've ever seen in my entire life, which is the head and arm throw. That in women's MMA, this is a basic move. It seems to be the go-to for a lot of women's fighters to try and get a fight to the ground. They go for this head and arm throw that they normally always get, to be fair to them. But I am going to side with Jaqueline Amori here again as the prospect. I love the way Montserrat Ruiz looks when she's turned around, but Jaqueline Amori is a good prospect, and I believe she's going to learn from that loss to Sam Hughes, where at the end of the day, she didn't take too much damage. It was her UFC debut, and she's already making a quick turnaround, so I don't think she's going to have any rust out there. I reckon she'll give a better performance and look like the Jaqueline Amori that we were expecting in her debut. We move on to another fight up the card, Josh Parisian versus Martin Buday. I'm going with Tom Segura, okay? Martin Buday is going to win this fight against Josh Parisian. It's another one of these picks where you just can't logically go with Josh Parisian here. He is dangerous, but Martin Buday, although I don't think he beat Lucas Bursky is way more light on his feet than Josh Parisian. Way better boxing as well, way better conditioning, way better cardio. And I think that Martin Buday is actually pretty good. You know what I mean? He arguably should have beaten Chris Barnett. That was not an illegal elbow. I don't know why they stopped it for that. But he did get the win by technical decision anyway. He beat Lorenzo Hood on the Contender Series. Finished him. That was a dangerous big dude, 12-4. Beat Lucas Bursky. Got gifted a decision, but still looked pretty decent on the feet in that fight. Jake Collier is no joke, and he outpushed him in the later two rounds of that fight. So although he's really fat and disgusting, he's got really good conditioning for his size, and I think that Josh Parisian's going to get held against a cage, maybe end up on bottom position in a certain moment, and just get outworked as the fight goes on, because usually when these fat heavyweights go to a decision, they get sloppy, but Martin Buday knows how to work in the clinch, knows how to work up against defense, and that can be the difference maker in these fights. So I'm going to go with Martin Buday over Josh Parisian, not to mention Martin Buday is 31 years of age. You know what I mean? He's 31 years of age. Very, very young for a heavyweight. 34-year-old Josh Parisian, who's already been finished a few times and taken some damage. We move on. Up the card. Francis Marshall versus Isaac Dulgarian. I'm going against Francis Marshall. Now, I know 82% of people are picking Francis Marshall to win, but I'm going to side with Isaac Dulgarian because I think he's pretty good. 27 years of age, out of Factory X Muay Thai. Been pretty inactive recently, but I kind of like that. I kind of like that he hasn't been in there. You know what I mean? Like, He won against a 7-2 guy on Dana White's Looking for a Fight at FAC 12. Beat a 7-2 guy, TJ Breeden, in the first round by KO. Has an amateur career at 4-0. Has a pro career at 5-0 now. So he has got some experience. It's not like he's just got that 5-0 pro career that we see now and again where people get exposed. He does have some amateur experience. He didn't start MMA long ago. He's been very, very active in his regional career, which is something I really wanted to point out because in 2019, he started his career in December. In 2019, he had 4 amateur fights in 2020, 3 amateur fights, in 2020. He had 4 pro fights in 2021, and then 1 fight in 2022, and now he's taken a year and 6 months off. I think we're going to see a massive change in skill level, and he's already wiping the floor with these regional guys and destroying them in the first round, whereas you look at Francis Marshall's career, although he did look quite technical on the Contender Series, I'm starting to realize everyone's technical in this game at the lower weight classes. Like, it's hard to be bad looking technique-wise at flyweight and bantamweight. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not going to judge it based on, he looks pretty technical. Took a 24-30 fighter to decision on the regional scene. You know what I'm saying? Dulgarian's finishing in the first round 7-2 fighters. He takes a 7-6 fighter to the 3rd round where he gets a submission. You know what I mean? I'm going to have to go with Isaac Dulgarian here. I think he's got a higher finishing potential. And not to mention, the last fight that he had against William Gomez, this is Francis Marshall, by the way. Last fight he had against William Gomez, was not impressed with him. He looked like a guy who was trying to rob his way to a victory instead of actually put in the work and actually do something in the fight. He did absolutely nothing and watched the fight slip away from him. I can't trust him there. I'm going to go with Isaac Dulgarian in his debut, making a splash with a first round finish in an upset win. We move on. Terrance McKinney versus Mike Breeden. I'm going to go Terrance McKinney, yeah? But he could lose again because Mike Breeden's not some joke. You know what I mean? He's actually pretty decent. Although his record doesn't really suggest that. He had a rough go of things in the UFC so far. You know, went to a very close fight with Natan Levy, but lost. That's not a good look though, is it really? You know what I mean? Losing to Natan Levy. But he got smoked by Alexander Hernandez in his debut. But he took that fight on very short notice. Other than that, he doesn't really have any great wins, though. You know what I mean? He's lost to Ivy Nixon 3-2, finished in the first round. Lost to a 3-0 Lucas Trey, split decision loss. Anthony Romero finished him, beaten by decision, on the Contender Series. This is a guy who failed his first attempt on a Contender Series. So I think there is some potential for Terrance McKinney to get a first round KO if Alexander Hernandez can, and if Ivy Nixon can, who is 3-2 on the regional scene. I think he's got the chance to do it. Now, I think that Terrance McKinney needs to genuinely fight like his career's on the line. He needs to go out there and give it all he's got in the first round. I don't want to see a patient McKinney being all careful on the outside. I want to see the McKinney that went out there, ragdolled for SEM, choked him out in the first round. You know what I mean? Smoked Eric Gonzalez in the first round. Smoked Matt Frivola in the first round. Had a very close fight with Drew Dober. That's the Terrance McKinney I want to see. I don't want to see this patient guy looking to set things up. Be you. You know what I mean? And if it fails, it fails. But I don't want to see him start making adjustments like being very patient, couple leg kicks around. I think Terrance is way better than Mike Breeden as a fighter. I am worried that he will gas out after round 1 because he spends more time on Twitter than on a running machine. So I'm going to have to go with Terrance McKinney, but wouldn't be surprised if Breeden gets it done. So if it makes it out of the first round and McKinney's just like dominated him 10-8, live bet on Mike Breeden might not be a bad idea in all honesty because he could end up making a comeback knowing how bad McKinney's cardio is. We move on. McGhee versus JP Buys. Very unfortunate for JP Buys. He's going to lose. I don't know why he's managing his career in this way, but he's going to lose. Simple as that. I do not see him winning this fight. Why would you fight Marcus McGhee, who looked phenomenal in his debut? You're JP Buys, remember? Like, I really understand. He's coming off a really bad ACL injury that he had, and he's just got back to work, and he's been training at Sarah Longo's gym. So I understand there might be some improvements there, but why on earth would you take on Marcus McGhee in your debut? He's 33, out of the MMA lab, been doing this for a while, since 2012. He's had an on and off career early on because of injuries. So he's been in the game a lot longer than people think. He's been in the game since 2012. And now he's coming up on a few fight win streak, beat Journey Newson with ease, by the way, and looked great. I don't know who wins between Journey Newson and JP Buys. He looked great, and there wasn't much to see of him coming into his debut because he hadn't fought great competition on the regional scene. But he looked great in his debut, on short notice as well, by the way. Now that he's got a full training camp, he was supposed to be fighting Gaston Bolaños, and now JP Buys is filling in on short notice. JP Buys is already a guy who gasses out. I think JP has taken this because he's realized, hang on a second here, I'm on a 3-fight losing streak in the UFC. They're probably not going to give me another fight. So he's taken whatever they've offered him, and this is his chance. I can see him doing all right in the first round, maybe getting a takedown or two, and then Marcus McGhee breaking him down in the later rounds and finishing him by second round TKO. Second round KO for Marcus McGhee. We move on. Josh Fremd versus Jamie Pickett. I'm going with Josh Fremd. I had some feelings about Josh Fremd as a prospect because I was like, okay, he looks pretty good. Oh, look what Anthony Hernandez did to him. But now we're starting to realize that Anthony Hernandez is literally doing that to everyone. Literally everyone. He got nastily guillotine choked by Tresean Gordo. Very nasty. That's very unfortunate for him, though. Got caught in a guillotine. I think he was like, it was such a nasty looking guillotine. He was like caught up against a cage. He couldn't like move around in there and try and escape. It was like a really bad position for him. Got tapped out by Tresean Gore. But before that, wasn't looking terrible. You know what I mean? Cedric Dumas beat him, choked him out in round 2. I reckon he's going to beat Jamie Pickett. Now, I think Jamie Pickett's all right. But I just think he's a bit of a bitch. My honest opinion. Now, I know that he got groin shotted by Bo Nickel, and that's why he got taken down. But we've seen him against Dennis Talulin and Daukaus as well. And we've seen him in other fights that he's lost to Jordan Wright and Tafon and Nchukwi. He does okay. And then he just starts like not even trying to really win anymore and really making it dull. And I just don't see Josh Fremd with his style where he can mix in grappling. He can strike on the feet as well, leaving this to a close decision at the end of the day. He's a big guy for the light heavyweight, middleweight division. Long reach, 29 years of age. I just think Fremd has more to go in his career than Jamie Pickett. So I think this is going to be the end of Jamie Pickett's career. 34 years of age. I ain't got him winning this one. Josh Fremd will win this fight. I think he's way more well-rounded and way better in general and way more potential. We move on. Up the card to another fight that was Tafon and Nchukwi versus AJ Dobson. I'm going to go AJ Dobson over Tafon and Nchukwi. Tafon and Nchukwi is so hit and miss as a fighter, whereas AJ Dobson, although he's losing to Jacob Malkoun and Arman Petrosian, those are good middleweights. Those are really good unranked middleweights. There's unranked middleweights that are absolute garbage, then there's actually secretly good unranked middleweights. And those are Arman Petrosian and Jacob Malkoun. Jacob Malkoun arguably could have beaten Brendan Allen. You know what I mean? That was a very close fight in Singapore all that time ago. So I don't blame him for those 2 losses. Very tough fights to have. Before that, he was doing work outside the UFC. On the Contender Series, beat a 6-0 guy. On the regional scene, beat a 4-1 opponent. Has an amateur career as well, where he lost as an amateur to John Gunther. If you don't know who that is, that was a guy that was on a very old season, I believe, of The Ultimate Fighter, if I'm not mistaken, with Joe Giannetti, Mike Trezano. Lost on there. I think he was like a llama tamer or some weirdness like that. I can't even remember. But he has fought experienced guys on the regional scene, on the pro scene. He's been around since 2012. I think he's going to fight like he needs to win this one, and I can trust him to win in terms of finish more than I can Tafon and Nchukwi, because Tafon 6-3 has looked all right, but coming off 2 KO losses back-to-back is different than coming off 2 decision losses, in my opinion. That's going to make Tafon and Nchukwi a little bit hesitant, and he's in there with quite a powerful guy in AJ Dobson, so I'm going to have to go with AJ Dobson here. Finishing potential way higher, and Tafon and Nchukwi's too hit and miss in his performances, and he's coming off 2 KO losses. So if I'm to bet whether or not he's going to be a hit or a miss after 2 bad KO losses, I'm going to have to go with him being a miss. Moving on, going AJ Dobson. We move on, up the card. Polyana Viana versus Iasmin Lucindo. I am going to be going with... This is actually a tricky one. I thought I knew who I was going to be picking here. But at the end of the day, I don't really know who I'm going to be picking here. I thought I'd have an answer. I think I'm going with Polyana Viana, but Iasmin Lucindo is really good. But finishing potential, not much. You know, recent fights at least on the regional scene and against Uregui and against Broken Wall, because she looked all right against Uregui, but Polyana Viana does have a knack for finishing fights with her. You know, she KO'd Jinyu Frey in her last fight, lost to Richie in a really boring snooze fest, but subbed Mallory Martin, who are these fighters, though, that she's beaten, really? Jinyu Frey, Mallory Martin, Emily Whitmire? You know what? I'm going with Iasmin Lucindo. I think she's fought better competition. Even in her losses, she's fought game opponents. She beat Brogan Walker, who's not that good. Not that good, I get it. But her fight with Iasmin Uregui in a stand-up match for 3 rounds where no one got finished, she actually held her own in that fight quite a bit. Sarah Frotter was 9-3 on the regional scene, and she's no joke. She used to be in the UFC, but lost a few fights in the UFC, of course. Yeah, she was. She lost 2 in a row in the UFC. One to Liviana Souza and Gillian Robertson. So she has got good experience, you know what I mean? Like, she's fought some decently experienced women. I am going to go with Iasmin Lucindo over Polyana Viana here. And I haven't checked the odds, but I can see the majority are picking Polyana Viana. I'm assuming she's going to be a slight underdog here. Iasmin Lucindo is a big favorite. Right, never mind then. So I think the most people are wrong. I'm going with Iasmin Lucindo. I thought I'd pick a genius underdog pick there, but I feel like most people are picking this wrong. I'm going to go with Iasmin Lucindo. We move on. Up the card, Khalil Rountree versus Chris Daukaus. So, I don't know if you've noticed the shade of Rountree, but Daukaus doesn't seem to fight well against. I'm joking. No, I'm going with Khalil Rountree over Chris Daukaus. Chris Daukaus was never good. He was just a heavyweight. And that's sad to hear. But I've been saying that about him. I said that just after his fight with Olenek and Shamil Abdurakhimov. As soon as he fought Shamil Abdurakhimov, and I was watching him walk into punches against Shamil with no understanding of depth perception and range control and distance management. Said that 3 different ways there. I feel like I've got to go with Khalil Rountree here. Striking-wise, way better. It's not even like Chris Daukaus has this unfathomable power as well. He's been finished 3 times in a row. Brutally as well. Like, got smoked by Derek Lewis badly. Smoked by Curtis Blades badly. And smoked by Rosenstruik in his last fight. I'm going to have to go with Khalil Rountree. Too technical. Way better on the feet, stand-up-wise. Daukaus ain't even going to be a huge guy out there, but I know he's looking a lot leaner. But I just think he's moving down into a higher skill gap division that still has the power to put you out cold. So I'm going to go with Chris Daukaus getting KO'd in round 1. I reckon it's going to be a real bad fight for him. We move on up the card to another fight. Cub Swanson versus Hakeem Dawodu. I'm going with... This is another worrying one where I wasn't sure. I'm going to go Hakeem Dawodu over Cub Swanson, to be honest with you, because I've been noticing some, like, damage-taking differences from Cub Swanson. I also don't think he's a very big guy for the 145-pound division. He always looks quite small out there against certain fighters. Now, he does put on great performances, like against Daniel Pineda, he looked great. He looked really good against Daniel Pineda. Darren Elkins, though. Do I rate a win over Darren Elkins? You know, I see him get beaten easily by Giga Chikadze, beaten easily by Jonathan Martinez. Now, those are good opponents, don't get me wrong. But they're not opponents that are just smoking everyone in the first round at a higher level. Martinez is now going to decisions more. Chikadze's now going to decisions more. The finishing potential was lowered, but it was there against Cub Swanson. That worries me as an older fighter who's taken some damage. I'm going to go Hakeem Dawodu. He's quite a large featherweight. And he's not the tallest of guys, but he's quite dense for a featherweight. He's very strong for featherweight as well. And to be fair, in hindsight, held his own in round 3 against Movsar Evloev. Did lose to Julian Erosa, which is the craziest thing to me. But I don't see Cub Swanson taking him down and out-grappling him here. He probably might be able to, but I just don't see it happening. I think it's going to be a stand-up match. And I can see Dawodu being mean in the clinch. No pun intended. I think he's going to be a little bit too mean in the clinch. Land the shots that he needs to. And get this finish maybe in the 3rd round by knees to the body. We've seen Swanson hurt to the body a few times before. If I'm not mistaken, he was hurt to the body by Chikadze and got finished by it. He was hurt to the body by Max Holloway and eventually got guillotine choked. I think there's going to be options to the body here with the knees in the clinch of Hakeem Dawodu. We move on to the main event. Vicente Luque versus Rafael dos Anjos. Now, I am worried after hearing about Vicente Luque's brain hemorrhage that he had. But at the end of the day, there's levels of brain hemorrhage. And I'm assuming it's going to be quite a mild one. Okay? I'm assuming he isn't vegetabilized and he's going to be wheeled out to the octagon this weekend. Like, I think he's done the tests. He's taken a whole year off, by the way, which is very good to hear because he's not trying to make a turnaround 6 months later or anything like that. He's had a whole year off. At the end of the day, I think you have to have consequences for Luque, whether it be a double leg takedown out of nowhere or immense power on the feet. Bilal had the double leg. Jeff Neal had the power on the feet. And you have to be able to mix it up a bit. Straight punches work. RDA don't got great straight punches. You know what I mean? He throws hooks in frequency, doesn't have a crazy amount of power at welterweight, does have the ability to grapple, but Luque is so hard to finish on the ground. So unbelievably hard to finish on the ground. He's got very good jiu-jitsu awareness to know when a submission's coming and how to escape it. We've seen that a lot in Luque's career, where people have him in a tough sub attempt and he's able to sort of wriggle his way out of it. We saw it against Bryan Barberena. We saw it against Michael Chiesa as well. I don't think he's going to be in any trouble on the ground here with RDA. I don't think RDA is going to be strong enough to hold him down for 5 rounds. 5 rounds, by the way, it's a tough ask for RDA to have to control him for that long. I just don't see RDA finishing him. I don't think RDA is as good or strong and big as Belal Muhammad. I'm giving Belal Muhammad praise because I picked him to beat Luque in the rematch. I think Luque's got more for RDA to worry about. I think he's a bigger, more powerful Fiziev, just a little bit slower, but that is to be expected with the higher weight class. I think Luque's too powerful. I think he's got better chin. And I think he's got good submission potential as well. And this just seems like the step up in RDA's career where at the end of the day, we've been watching RDA do it for a very long time. He's a legend of the sport, but he's 38 years of age, coming off a win over Bryan Barberena, but it's Bryan Barberena. You know what I mean? I know Luque had a tough fight with him, but still, Fiziev knocked him out. I've just seen too much of RDA recently. I'm going to go with Vicente Luque, getting a finish. Maybe he drops RDA in round 3 and Dash choke finishes him. Like and subscribe. Toodle pip. I'll see you later. Goodbye.